Welcome everyone, it's Shari Carroll for SimonsStamp.com, and I'm here with the mixed media project where I've used a Brutus Monroe vintage tile stencil as the background to my piece. I'm starting off with the Tim Holtz vignette box. This is the 5.5 by 5.5 size, and I'll be decorating the top. I'm going to first cover this with some white gesso to seal in that stain and also to give me a good base for my crackle paste. I'll be covering the entire top and also the sides with the gesso, and if I need to, I'll go back and add a second coat. Now that the gesso is completely dry, I'm going to be using some opaque crackle paste, and I'll just be putting this onto the piece using a palette knife. I'm adding different heights of the paste so that I can get large and small crackles, and I'm only putting this just to the top of the box. I've allowed this to dry really well, and I've also used my heat tool just to heat it up in some of those areas that are thicker. But you can start to see the crackle, and it'll really come out once I get the paint and stain on top. So to paint this, I'm using Tim Holtz Speckled Egg Distress Paint, and I'm using my Simons Stamp Corner Ink Cube holder as my palette to hold my paint. With a distress brush, I'm just going to paint on the speckled egg on the top and sides. I find it helpful to use my brush both up and down and sideways to get into all those cracks of the crackle paste. Now that my paint is dry, I'm going to use the Brutus Monroe Vintage Tile Stencil, and this fits perfectly onto the top of the box. And for my stenciling, I'm going to use the Brutus Monroe Glitter Glaze, and this is the Alabaster, and it comes in a 2-ounce bottle. With my stencil being held in place by my hand, I can dip into the glitter glaze and start pushing the glaze through the stencil. I worked in small areas at a time so that I could readjust my fingers to make sure that I held that stencil down in place. And then by grabbing just the bottom of the stencil, I'm going to do a quick dismount to reveal the paste. And at this point, I can start to clean off any of the sides where the design went over the edge. But this is a really beautiful white shiny glaze that looks gorgeous as it is. So this is where I'm going to take this another step further. So I've let the glaze completely dry, and I'm going to distress this using some walnut stain spray stain. And for that, I'm just going to spray this into my corner cube holder in just one of those little wells. And once I have enough in the well, I can spritz this with a little bit of water so that I can dilute this down. And for that, I'm using my mini mister. And I always have to look for the spray nozzle. I can just spray this down to create a diluted mix. Next, using my distress brush, I've dipped into that walnut stain mixture, and I'm going to start painting this on and pushing it into the cracks of the crackle paste. I was pleasantly surprised to see how the glitter glaze soaked up that walnut stain to add color. I found that the glitter glaze is water reactive, so I needed to work fast, and so I'm just spreading the walnut stain all over the piece as quick as I can. And then I blotted up some of the areas using a paper towel to get more of a distressed look. Once this was completely dry, and it does sit flat, but you can see that sheen and also the color, depending on how you turn the piece to look at it. And next I want to add a couple pieces to the top. So I have cut the Winsome leaf from Simons Stamp using some vellum, and this is a really beautiful delicate leaf die. To glue this down, I'm adding some dots of the Simons Stamp Craft Tacky glue just on each of the leaves and in some areas of the stem. And then I can invert this and place it right onto my project. And I'm going to place this a little bit right of center where that stem comes down to the bottom on the right, and then the top leaf sits just to left of center on the top, and then I can press this down until it's dry. I've die cut the Simons Stamp Love You So Much die, and I've used our new champagne cardstock, and I've also backed this with a couple of layers of white so that it sits up just a little bit off the project. And again, to glue this down, I'm using the Simons Stamp Craft Tacky Glue. And I really want to make sure that I get all those little edges of the letters so that they'll sit down flat and nothing will lift up. And once again, I'll turn this over and place it onto my project. And this one will sit right of center just over those leaves. So again, I want to make sure that I have that lined up and press it down until it dries. And here's a close-up look, and when I turn this to the side, you can see the shine from the champagne cardstock and also the glitter from that vintage tile stencil. I'll be giving this one to Melody since she loves to watch my videos and see the projects in person. Here's a quick tip, and I wanted to show you what the box looks like if you don't use gesso. It has a much rougher look to it than the gessoed piece, and you can still see some of the wood grain through the sides. So if you want a nice clean piece, I would suggest using the gesso first. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. I really love how the crackle paste really pops out, and then that vintage tile stencil in all its glittery goodness. Remember to always try to step out of your box, experiment a little bit, and have fun creating. And as always, thanks so much for watching.
Hi there, I'm Heidi, Simon's mama and founder at simonsaysstamp.com. Thank you so much for watching our video. If you like what you just saw, be sure to press the thumbs up and subscribe to see more great content.